Well, I'm sorry to say that part of what gave me the idea for this story was I'd actually written a story a few years ago talking about, one of those kind of woe is Florida stories, really predicting that Florida had some real short-term and long-term problems. That certainly nothing has happened in the last few years that have made me want to take any of that back. But then just recently when I started reading similar stories about California, I thought, gosh, a lot of those problems look pretty familiar. But California has these incredible upsides that we don't have. Where's our Silicon Valley? Part of, we also have water problems and budget problems and, the kind of unsustainability problems that people talk about in California. But what we don't have is a sort of, a kind of economic engine that you could point to and say, like, well, this is where the jobs of the future are going to come from. Florida, for too long, we've been living this kind of Ponzi scheme where everybody who's here is kind of a mortgage banker or a realtor or a construction guy or the tile guy or, window guy or a landscaper. But somebody whose job depends on, bringing in 1,000 more mortgage bankers and drywall guys and construction guys and realtors tomorrow. And it was at some point that was going to collapse, and it has. And it's not clear what exactly is going to replace it. Well, yeah, I think it's a range of policy choices, but that if you had to sum them up, would kind of be short-term thinking. Senator Graham has always talked about how for too long Florida has been seen as a commodity rather than a resource. I think that kind of basically describes it. It's been run by the state's been run by a few powerful industries, and there's no public transit, but there's plenty of there's kind of sprawl-based policies where you build more roads to connect, one piece of swampland to somebody else's swampland where somebody, owns some land and wants a road built there. You develop the wetlands, you develop the submerged lands, you waive the FEMA regulations and the coastal zone regulations and the zoning regulations. And it's just been, you don't, and most obviously, you don't really invest in the future. You don't invest in education. California's Silicon Valley didn't just happen by accident. It happened because it had the best university system in the world. And Silicon Valley popped up right around, Cal Berkeley, as well as, Stanford and Caltech and UCSF. And it's not, they had a publicly funded defense industry too, but also, federal energy labs. And there was a real use of government as a force of progress. That in Florida, government, you don't want to go too far down the Carl Hiaasen road, but he's onto something. The government has been, sort of a force of looting. Well, it should be the gateway to, it's sitting right down there in the Gulf, and it ought to be, I don't want to dismiss everything that's been done there. There's some, I live in Miami, and it's an exciting place to live, and there's a lot going on, and it's a cool place. But there are not a lot of jobs in downtown Miami. They've built a lot of big buildings in the last 5 years, and they are sitting empty because, there's no jobs for people to live there, and I just think that's going to be a real, where you're starting to see a biotech industry, and that's though again, California beat us by 20 years to that, and we're just starting to see some offshoots of Scripps and Burnham, which are California institutions that have opened up Florida outposts, and that's and you're starting to see some green energy investments in Florida, which is also exciting. But again, California is way ahead and is, already has the kind of high-tech infrastructure to deal with that kind of stuff. So we're behind. We've got sunshine. We're a really attractive place to live, but we don't have a high-quality workforce because we don't have high-quality schools.
Okay.